In 1998, a bank discovered that $242 million had vanished from its accounts. But the missing money wasn't the real disaster. The real disaster was what investigators uncovered next. The bank believed it had invested hundreds of millions of dollars into the construction of a brand new international airport, a project that promised enormous profits, a project supported by powerful officials, a project that seemed completely legitimate. There was only one problem. The airport didn't exist. No runways, no terminals, no construction crews, no machinery, nothing. Just empty land. How could a respected financial institution fall for such an unbelievable scam? How could experienced bankers transfer $242 million without realizing they were funding a fantasy? And who was the mastermind bold enough to attempt such a scheme? This is the true story of Emmanuel Nwude, the man who sold an imaginary airport. To understand how this incredible fraud happened, we need to travel back several decades, back to Nigeria, a country rich in natural resources, filled with opportunity, but also struggling with corruption and political instability. It was in this environment that Emmanuel Nwude began his journey. Unlike most criminals, Emmanuel did not start as an outsider. He was educated, respected, and deeply familiar with the world of finance. He worked in banking. He understood how money moved across borders. He understood how executives made decisions. And most importantly, he understood how trust worked. Trust is one of the most valuable currencies in the financial world. Without trust, banks cannot lend, investors cannot invest, and businesses cannot grow. But trust can also become a weakness, especially when it falls into the hands of someone willing to exploit it. By the mid-1990s, international investors were actively searching for opportunities in emerging markets. Africa attracted increasing attention. Governments were announcing infrastructure projects. Companies were expanding. Investors were looking for the next big opportunity. And Emmanuel saw something others did not. He saw an opportunity not to build wealth, but to steal it. His target would eventually be a senior executive from a Brazilian bank, a man named Nelson Sakaguchi. Like many successful executives, Nelson was constantly searching for profitable investments. The bigger the opportunity, the bigger the rewards. And Emmanuel knew exactly how to present them. The proposal looked impressive. Professional documents, official-looking letters, government connections, financial projections. Everything appeared genuine. Everything appeared legitimate. Nigeria was preparing to develop a major international airport. Investors who participated early would receive substantial returns. Government support was supposedly guaranteed. The project sounded ambitious, profitable, and urgent. There was pressure to act quickly, pressure that would eventually cloud judgment. Because of finance, fear often comes in waves. Fear of losing money, fear of missing out. The first contact seemed ordinary. A proposal, a conversation, an investment opportunity. Nothing appeared unusual. Nothing appeared suspicious. That was exactly what made the scheme so dangerous. Great scams rarely begin with outrageous promises. They begin with believable ones. And Emmanuel understood this better than most. He knew that if the story sounded too incredible, nobody would believe it. So he built his deception carefully, piece by piece, document by document, conversation by conversation. Then he made a move that transformed the fraud from ambitious to extraordinary. He began impersonating a high-ranking Nigerian official, not a local businessman, not a project manager, not a consultant, a powerful government figure. Specifically, he posed as the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, a position associated with authority, credibility, and influence. The kind of position that instantly commands trust. Whenever questions arose, he had answers. Whenever concerns appeared, he provided reassurance. Whenever doubts surfaced, he made them disappear. His confidence was remarkable. His knowledge of banking procedures was genuine. His understanding of financial language was real. And that made the deception incredibly convincing. Because the most dangerous lies often contain pieces of truth. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into negotiations. Negotiations turned into transactions. And then the money started moving. The first transfers were relatively small. Nothing that would immediately attract attention. Just enough to establish momentum. Just enough to build commitment. Just enough to make backing out feel difficult. Then larger payments followed, and larger ones after that. Each transfer justified by another requirement, another approval, another administrative expense, another government fee, another reason why immediate payment was necessary. From the outside, everything seemed normal. The paperwork existed. The communication continued. The project appeared alive. Progress appeared real. But it was all an illusion. As millions of dollars flowed into accounts controlled by Emmanuel and his associates, the fake airport remained exactly what it had always been. A story, a fabrication, a fantasy. Yet somehow, the fantasy was making people rich. Very rich. At least for a while. The money kept arriving. $10 million, $20 million, $50 million, then even more. The numbers became almost impossible to comprehend. By the time the scheme reached its peak, the total would exceed $242 million. For most people, such wealth is unimaginable. For Emmanuel, it became reality. He purchased luxury homes, high-end vehicles, valuable properties, expensive assets. His lifestyle transformed completely. To friends and observers, he appeared successful, a respected businessman, a wealthy entrepreneur, a man who had mastered the game of finance. Few people suspected that the foundation of his empire was built on fiction. And as the years passed, his confidence grew. Every successful transfer reinforced the illusion. Every unanswered question increased his sense of security. Every day without discovery made him believe he had won. But every fraud has a weakness: time. Because lies require constant maintenance. Truth does not. Eventually, somewhere inside a financial report, inside a balance sheet, inside a routine review, questions began to emerge. Small questions at first. Questions that seemed insignificant. Questions that would eventually destroy everything. Where was the airport? Where was the construction progress? Where were the reports? Where were the results? Where was the evidence? The deeper investigators looked, the stranger the situation became. Records failed to match reality. Claims lacked verification. Documents raised concerns. The puzzle pieces no longer fit together. And that was when the nightmare truly began.
The investigation intensified. What had started as a routine financial review was quickly becoming something much larger, much darker, much more expensive. Investigators could no longer ignore the inconsistencies. The airport project was supposed to be one of the most significant investments on the bank's books. Hundreds of millions of dollars had been committed. Years had passed, yet there was almost nothing tangible to show for it. No verified progress reports, no completed construction phases, no independent confirmation. The deeper they dug, the more alarming the situation became. Every answer seemed to create two new questions. Every document led to another dead end. Every explanation appeared weaker than the last. Something was terribly wrong. Then came the moment that changed everything. The moment when suspicion turned into certainty. The moment when a hidden fraud became an international scandal. Investigators discovered that the airport simply did not exist. Not partially completed, not delayed, not abandoned, non-existent. The project that had absorbed $242 million was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. There were no runways, no terminals, no airport infrastructure, no major construction effort. Nothing. The investment was a mirage. Shock spread through the financial world. Executives struggled to comprehend what had happened. Auditors re-examined years of records. Investigators raced to trace the money. The media quickly seized the story. How could experienced professionals have been deceived so completely? How could hundreds of millions of dollars disappear into a project that never existed? How had nobody noticed sooner? The questions seemed endless. The embarrassment was enormous. And the financial damage was devastating. One of the largest banking frauds in history had finally been exposed. As authorities closed in, the pressure on Emmanuel and his associates intensified. Investigators followed financial trails. Witnesses were questioned. Records were examined. International cooperation increased. The walls were closing in. There was nowhere left to hide. Eventually, Emmanuel Nwude was arrested. The man who had spent years manipulating executives, bankers, and financial institutions now faced a very different reality. Courtrooms replaced luxury offices. Investigators replaced business partners. Judges replaced investors. The image of a successful businessman began to collapse, and beneath it emerged the truth. A truth built from forged documents, false identities, deception, and greed. Lots of greed. The legal proceedings attracted widespread attention.
After years of investigations and legal battles, justice finally caught up with the scheme. The man who had once appeared untouchable was sentenced to prison. His empire began to crumble. Assets were seized. Properties came under scrutiny. The fortune that had seemed permanent suddenly looked fragile. For years, Emmanuel had believed he was smarter than the system, smarter than the banks, smarter than the investigators, smarter than everyone. But no one is smarter than reality forever. Eventually, reality always wins. Perhaps that is why this story continues to fascinate people around the world. Not because of the money, not because of the fake airport, not even because of the scale of the fraud, but because it reveals something about human nature. People want to believe. Investors want opportunities. Executives want success. And sometimes, when a story promises exactly what people want to hear, they stop asking difficult questions. That was Emmanuel's greatest weapon. Not technology, not force, not threats. Belief. He convinced intelligent people to believe a fiction. And for a time, that fiction became more powerful than the truth. But only for a time. Because every lie carries within it the seed of its own destruction. Every deception leaves traces. Every fraud creates cracks. And sooner or later, the truth finds its way through. The story of Emmanuel Nwude remains one of the most astonishing fraud cases ever recorded. A reminder that intelligence without integrity can become dangerous. A reminder that trust, once broken, can cost millions. And a reminder that even the most elaborate deception cannot survive forever. In the end, the airport was never built. The dream was never real. The fortune did not last. And the truth finally arrived. Because no matter how carefully a lie is constructed, no matter how powerful it becomes, no matter how many people believe it, the truth is patient. And sooner or later, the truth always lands.